I received an interesting email day before yesterday, and it made me start thinking. It was about one of the first videos I shot when I came back here to YouTube and started doing videos about acting, directing, and editing. So what I want to talk about today is how I made money off of my no-budget films. I actually don't make them anymore because the market has changed so much. When I got that response, I started to think it was time for me to update that video and to lay out some of the ideas I have about making money off of no-budget films, because it's still possible. I just don't do it because I moved here to YouTube and I'm creating most of my content. I'm focusing on creating here for YouTube. But there is a possibility to make money on no-budget films. One of the ways that I would recommend is going the festival route, the film festival route. So there are a lot of festivals out there that focus on no budget, micro budget, independent feature films. And that is where you as a filmmaker can get discovered. You can potentially sell your film for streaming. You can meet some people there because buyers actually attend festivals looking for potential product that they can bring, because there's a never ending need for content for streaming. And I don't even foresee an end. I just see a continuous growth for streaming. Another thing that festivals can do, it can bring you recognition to raise money to increase your budgets, or raise money to continue to do micro budget films. So festivals are a great route for no budget films, and a way that you can still to this day potentially make money on something you spent no money or almost no money on, a feature film. Next step, again, I just mentioned it briefly, streaming platforms. Now, that gets a little more difficult. When I first decided to come back here to YouTube, right before that, I was really obsessed with trying to get some of my content on streaming platforms. Some of my old films, and what made me focus on streaming platforms, that a lot of distributors, maybe like 3 or 4 small distributors, had been contacting me about some of the films that I did in the early 90s and the 2000s. They wanted to distribute them and put them on streaming platforms. So I made deals with some of them, and to my surprise, I was able to get nice size advances off of films that I had made in the 1990s. So I was happy about that, and that made me start thinking more about streaming. So I decided, okay, why don't I make some newer films and get them out on the streaming platforms myself? So I started investigating different avenues and how to do it. Film Hub was something that popped up. So Film Hub is what they call an aggregator. And you, as an independent filmmaker, you submit your film to Film Hub. They do all the checks and balances to make sure the quality is there. And then they make it available to online distribution platforms. So I started investigating Film Hub. I started up my Film Hub channel, and I submitted a short just to see how difficult the vetting process was on Film Hub. And to my surprise, it was very difficult. It was something that at my stage of career, I really wasn't interested in dealing with. I wanted a platform that was more, a way to get my films out that were more open, that was less of the gatekeeper, because I've been dealing with gatekeepers since the early 90s. And I honestly, to be truthful, I'm sick of it. And that's what has put me here on YouTube, to create content that I can figure out how to monetize using YouTube as a platform, as a channel. So again, the streaming platforms are not out of it. There are a lot of people, independent filmmakers, making money, going through Film Hub, going through other aggregators. Some go through distributors who then act on their behalf and reach out to streaming platforms. So that's another avenue where you can actually make money on a no-budget film. So streaming platforms. Self-distribution is another avenue that I tried in the early 80s. And I had some very limited success. That was so early that there were still video stores. I printed boxes. I made VHS duplications. I sent out samples and flyers. I bought a mailing list. And I started getting a response from mom and pop video stores. They no longer exist, obviously. But back then, it was a viable opportunity for me to self-distribute. And if I had had the funding to keep it going, it could have been something that led me down the production path and the distribution path. But distribution, as any filmmaker, if you do some investigation, you realize you're going to need just as much money or more for distribution that you will need to produce the film. So I did it for a few months, and I realized that I didn't have the money to continue on the distribution efforts. So I found a traditional distributor and put my film with them. Limited success, honestly, limited success that way. But so I did move on from self-distribution, and I tried it. And again, it's not impossible. Now with the internet, you have something that I didn't have. You can reach directly to the potential buyers for your film. And I've seen a number of filmmakers actually build sites around their film and actually sell copies of their film. And if your production budget is nothing or very minimal, there's a possibility to actually even make a profit. So if you can figure out how to use the internet to market your film directly to the people who want to watch it, that's a potential way to make money. And that's where I think YouTube comes in really helpful for you to use YouTube as a way to market your film and reach potential buyers that'll be willing to buy a digital download. Very limited use now as far as, I guess, DVD, but that's still not impossible. Recently, one of my older films was picked up by a distributor who distributes films from the they specialize in films from the early 90s and 2000s. And they made a Blu-ray of one of my older films that we made in the late this film was made in the early 90s. And so that was distributed. It was distributed, and they produced a Blu-ray for it. So Blu-rays aren't completely out of the question. That is still a possibility. There are a lot of people out there who still like physical media, myself being one of them. If I really like a film or an older film or even a new film or a television series, I like to buy the physical Blu-ray copy so that I can see the bonus material. I can watch it whenever I want. So physical media is not completely all gone, but honestly, it's, everyone knows it's on its way out. It's on its last legs. Another way to make money is merchandise and extra material for the film. There are sites where you can sell digital or physical content that goes along with your film. So there's ways to make money with that. That's a possibility. So that's another avenue of making money on your no budget film. Let's see, crowdfunding after the release. Now, this is something that I hadn't really thought about, but that's a possibility also, depending upon, you can use the first film to raise money to do the second one. So there's all kind of ways that you can use crowdfunding. People who like your project, who want to support you in going forward and creating more, people who want to help you recoup some of the money that you spent to make the project. You can give them special bonuses that come along with buying a copy of the film. So that's something to look into, crowdfunding after the release of the film. Also with educational no budget films, that's a way where you can sell ongoing content. You can create part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, whatever. Some people still buy a lot of educational content for schools, for programs that they might administer. So I've even been approached not too long ago about creating some content that would be released on DVD that was educational content for a reentry program. So there are still those possibilities. All these possibilities as far as physical media are really coming to an end, honestly, have to be honest about that. But they are still out there. They're not completely gone yet. So if someone really wants a hard copy, those are avenues where you can make money on those hard copies. And there are distributors. Distributors are you got to be careful with distributors. You got to try to get advances from them because, to be honest, not that they are crooked. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that there's not that much money to be made. So if a distributor he has an office, he or she has an office, they print the material, they print the advertising material, they have to recoup their expenses first. And whatever's left over, you get a part of that. And most of the time, there's not that much left over, to be honest. So small budget or no budget films aren't ideal for distribution deals, unless you can get some money up front. Local screenings and events. I've heard of people building events and local screenings and going, and what they used to call in the olden days, walling it, taking their film from city to city, doing their own advertising. At the screening, they would screen the film, people would pay to get in, and people could buy physical copies of the film. They could buy merchandise, hats, t-shirts, bags, cups. They could buy merchandise to help support the filmmaker and help support the filmmaker's ongoing projects or new projects. So that is a possibility. I've even heard, I know personally a young man who sells merchandise. He has a successful YouTube channel where he does a dating show. And so he goes from city to city and they sell merchandise, they do the show, they have promotions, sometimes they have events after it. So there are possibilities of ways you can do the same thing with your independent feature film. You need to build an audience, build a community, and that can be done here on YouTube. Again, my final thing is building a brand on YouTube. Now that's something that I'm currently, right now, working on, continuing to build my brand as a content creator here on YouTube. And my ultimate goal is to create serial content. I'm starting out with vertical content. That's something that I'm going to be starting out with. And I have ideas to take that into a off YouTube channel where viewers who enjoy the content can purchase future episodes. So YouTube will be the starting point. The first series will be free. And then if you want to see the next seasons, you would go to the pay side. So that's just an idea that I freely give out there. I would love to see more competition on that idea because it's working from a number of Chinese companies who are doing the same thing. Now they have big dollars backing them to get started because they're paying for vertical and the quality of the content and the acting and the story and just the overall concepts of their stories are something that I want to elevate. I want to make them bigger, more interesting, more character driven that can work here in the US. So that's a goal that I'm working on. Taking my no budget filmmaking concept and history and bringing that into the new media of YouTube. So that's a way that you can potentially make money off your no budget feature films. Because ultimately a series is just a long film. And so these new digital series are short episodes broken into little pieces that ultimately, if put all together, could be a feature film, a no budget film, whatever budget you decide to spend on it. So again, in closing, in the old days, when I say the old days, I mean the 90s, we had much more avenues to potentially sell our no budget projects. We don't have those anymore. They don't exist. So as an independent filmmaker, you need to do your research up front before you go into the project. Find out what audiences are underserved, what audiences are looking for more content that's geared towards them. And those are the audiences you want to focus on. You want to make content for. You want to reach out to those audiences and build a community. Even if you're just in the idea stage, you can start your pre-marketing. You could see how many people would be interested if you created something. You could have the script. You could have a preview summary or bring the actors together and do a table reading and see if there is an interest in the type of films or the type of series that you want to create. Do your initial research, find those untapped markets and reach out to them to see if they want content, to see if they'd be interested in watching content. Do surveys, there's ways to do surveys. Join communities on Facebook. Find out if there's a market for what you want to make. So you need to be smart about it. But again, there is that small possibility, even today in 2025 and beyond, 26, 27, 28, 29, there's always going to be a market for independent voices, independent films, documentaries, features. Series is going to be a big thing because a lot of people are watching and consuming content on their phone in a horizontal format. So think of all these new avenues and keep that independent spirit alive. And this video was really dedicated to a young lady who reached out to me, one of my earlier videos, and I realized she was right. I talked about independent films, but I didn't go into detail about possibilities of how to make money with these no budget films and if that still exists, and it really does. And I didn't explain how my past, when those opportunities were there, I took advantage of those. But those, like I said, a lot of those opportunities have dried up. Work for hire. Work for hire was a big way that I made money in the early days of my filmmaking career. I was hired by a lot of small distributors who at the time needed content, what I called at that time, I didn't even call it B movies. I called them shelf filler because they were small distributors and they had a need for product because they had a place to sell it in video stores and, in the mom and pop video stores. Some of my small budget films even made it into Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. So, but those days are gone. but you still have new ways to get your film out to viewers who want to see it. But it's going to require a little bit more research on your behalf to find out who your market is, who you're creating this content for, and how you're going to reach them. So thanks. I'll see you in the next one.